Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, 10 Reasons Why Patients Don't Follow Up and What Your Clinic Can Do About It. My name is Michael Marcangelo, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at eCurate. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that at the end of the presentation, there will be a question and answer session with Marybeth, so any questions you have, just feel free to type them as we go. Also, if for any reason you have to leave the presentation early, we are recording this webinar and can send you the recording to the email address that you provided us. I would like to introduce the Executive Director and Founder of eCurate, Marybeth Sherrin. Marybeth?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I thought we'd spend the next 45 minutes going through a bit of experience that I've had. I'm going to be talking to you today from a couple of different perspectives. One is as a clinician. I'm still on staff at Lowell General Hospital just north of Boston, and I'm going to talk to you about our experience trying to kind of crack the nut on how to get patients to follow up long term. I do want to thank our hospital staff. They've been really lovely in terms of supporting us. I'm going to just try to advance my slides here. Here we go. There we go. Hopefully you all see that. I want to thank our staff at Lowell General. They've been really fabulous in terms of allowing us to experiment and really dig deep in trying to figure out why patients follow up and why they do follow up and what we can learn from that. I want to give special thanks to Christine Lebrecq. She's our program director. I was hoping she could be here today, but she unfortunately is not able to, but she will definitely be on our next webinar in case you guys join that. Michael Geiser is also very supportive in terms of learning and trying new things in our clinic and helping us share them with clinics across the nation. So I hope you enjoy this session. I hope it rings a few bells for you. So let me tell you a little bit about this work that we've done at Lowell General and how it's influenced what we are now doing with eCurate. Lowell General is a community-based hospital. It's just north of Boston, about 40 minutes. It's a center of excellence. And we do about 400 cases annually. We're doing sleeves, bypass, and bands. Less bands, but definitely probably, we used to do 70-30 bands. Now we're probably about, 55-60 bypass, 35 heading up to 40% sleeves and growing. And bands seem to be pushing out a little bit. In terms of our patient population, it's a mixed socioeconomic status. We have blue-collar to professional workers, a lot coming from the IT, the belt along Route 128, the technology area. And we have a lot of patients who are on disability and on the welfare system. About 62% of our patients are Caucasian and 38% Latino, so we have a strong Spanish population that we do have to cater to. So I've been with this clinic since 2003. I've done about 7,000 psych evaluations and planning sessions with patients. And I've also had about 1,000 patients attend My Hungry Head program, which I've facilitated over the years. Was an in-person seminar. We have it now online, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Now, here's where the story starts. We at Lowell General, they've done a fabulous job in terms of follow-up. If we look at follow-up across the board in the bariatric world, we're not doing a great job. As you can see, 30 days out, it's not too bad. Lowell General is the darker orange, and the comparison sites across the nation are the lighter orange. So patients are pretty willing to show up for the 30-day follow-up. It drops off quite a bit at 6 months. 1 year is really shocking, actually. 34.7% are only showing up at that first year for their follow-up visits. Lowell General's looking pretty good, 61% of their patients following up. So, I don't know, a little less than double there. So when we pulled these numbers and looked at this trend at the 2-year mark, it goes down. 2 and 3 years, here are patients who, these are our do-gooders, I guess. These are the ones that are going to stick with it no matter what. You're going to see these people in this 2-year block probably showing up in the 5-year block. They're the dedicated ones. But Lowell General seemed to have some pretty good numbers around here, and it was very exciting to them. Wow, the thought was, wow, we're doing really, really well with our follow-up. But if we look at the rest of the people who are not showing up, well, are we really doing that great? We might be doing pretty well in comparison to the average, but what about all these people in here that are not showing up for their follow-ups, and how are they doing? So this happened about 3 or 4 years ago. We've been looking, we look at this data yearly, of course, but about 3-ish, maybe 4 years ago, we thought we have to roll up our sleeves and figure this out. Patients are coming in for the surgery. Getting patients isn't all that difficult, although competition has increased over the years and cases are being spread out a little more at the start of surgery. It seems like post-op follow-up is really what's going to make a difference in terms of patients choosing clinics. So we decided to roll up our sleeves and figure out what's really going on here. So what we did is looked at these numbers here, like these 1-year follow-ups, these 2-year follow-ups, these 3-year follow-ups. Who are they, and what's different about them that makes them want to continue to come to our clinic? So we saw 2 things. One is that some of these people who are in these orange blocks are not working. They have the time to come into the clinic. So we found that very interesting. A lot of our patients are workers, are professionals. They just do not have the time, or they don't make the time. They're working. They did all they could to get through our program, and now they're like, okay, the weight's off. I'm just going to go with what I have. The other group, which was very interesting, was a group of people who went to My Hungry Head program, a 6-week behavioral program before they went to surgery. So we thought, okay, let's take a peek at those people. Let's see what's going on with them. What is up with this My Hungry Head program? So we looked at the patients who have gone to the lecture-based class that we have, which is mandatory for all of our patients. Every patient going through Lowell General's program will go through 6 courses that will cover nutrition guidelines, planned eating, post-op challenges, all the things that a lot of programs talk about preoperatively. The courses are big, or they're lecture-based. There's usually more than 30 patients, sometimes up to 60 to 70 patients will show up for these classes. They're lecture-based, so there will be a clinician that will have a PowerPoint presentation and will work through the information. They're standalone classes, so it's not one class doesn't build on the other. They can go to one class and then maybe show up to exercise 1 week and go to nutrition guidelines the next, whichever fits into their schedule. They will receive informative handouts, and there'll be a Q&A session. So these classes patients are continuously assigned to them. These run every week, and when a patient shows up, they're assigned to these classes and given a schedule, and they can go hopefully at their assigned time. If not, they go when they can fit it in. So the My Hungry Head program interestingly, it covers a lot of the same information, but the way in which it's done is a little bit different. The course is limited to 12 patients. It's a small group, and it's cognitive behavioral focus in this course. It's very CBT-based with structured activities. There's homework exercises. It's very interactive with a lot of group processing. And this course is continuous with repetitive content. Every week, the course builds on the following week. So the patients are they're introduced to a topic, then they're asked to do something with that information, and then they come back, process the information, and then move on to the next topic, while still having each week build on the one before. And they're assigned to a cohort, so they're with the same group of people for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, however long we decide we're going to run that program. So looking at the differences, we're thinking, okay, does it even matter which course they go to? Some people like to interact, some people don't. So we decided to look at some measures here. Now, when we looked at our interactive My Hungry Head course, it looked like preoperatively we require a 5, at Lowell General they require 5% weight loss. The interactive group lost significantly more weight than the lecture-based group. So we're pretty excited about that at first. And then I said, we need to just hold back here, because that could just be that the My Hungry Head people are just more excited. They're just more into it and more focused. I mean, there's some level of self-selection that we had to consider here. So we looked at some more data. We looked at what happened post-operatively. So here's where the bubble starts to deflate a little bit. We looked at post-operative weight loss and percentage of excess body weight that was lost along the 4-month, 6-month, 9-month, 12-month, and 18 months. And looking at these numbers, there's really nothing exciting about them. Both groups are pretty similar. So we thought, all right, well, that didn't really tell us a whole lot. So when we looked at follow-up numbers, that's when it got a little interesting. We did get some unexpected information here. So our lecture-based classes are in blue, and My Hungry Head are the orange blocks. And you can see it follows a pretty similar pattern in terms of the patients who follow up until we hit to that longer-term mark, that 12-month mark, that 18-month mark. It starts going up. So we start to see that our My Hungry Head patients start coming back for follow-ups. For some reason, something hooked them in that program that they decided it's okay to go back to the clinic at that 18-month mark. So we really went back to, this is the chart that I showed you earlier. When we look at, from 4 to 18 months, or maybe even 18 months to 20, 24 months, what's really going on in terms of weight loss? And it looks like the surgery is really doing most of the work. So if we did not have to do any more work with our patients, everybody would be fixed forever at the 18-month mark, we wouldn't have to do anything other than the surgery. But of course, we all know that that's really not the case. So we started looking at average percentage of excess body weight lost 3 years out. So we started to dig a little deeper into those numbers. And what we saw was a pretty big difference with the My Hungry Head people on the left and the lecture-based on the right. We saw that there was a good 8-point spread in terms of the difference between the weight that was kept off in that group versus the lecture-based group. So again, this is a very small study. We only looked at about 100 patients, but it was a pilot study that we wanted to see, is there something here that we should look at clinically and make changes in our programs? So before we went off and made any big changes, we decided to pull in some patients that have taken the My Hungry Head program and ask them what the difference was. So we pulled in some very successful patients and some not so successful patients as well, but those that were still following up and still working on getting their behaviors in order. So we had 3 focus groups over about 18 months ago. We pulled some patients in and had an external provider come in and run some focus groups with these people who went to My Hungry Head. And they told us some really interesting information. Our question to them was, why do you still follow up? What is it that has kept you following up after you've taken My Hungry Head program? And they looked at it and thought, the first thing that came out of almost all of them was, I feel like I'm not alone. So there was something about that program that they felt they were not alone. The second thing is and these are not in any particular order of significance, but another thing they talked about, number 2, was the providers talked with us, not at us. So it was very important to them that they had content and information presented to them in a way that was engaging, and it was talking with them. Like it's a problem solving situation versus here's what you do and this is the right way to do things. So they were very, very adamant about getting us to avoid that kind of any kind of language that made them feel talked at. The third thing was interesting. They said that they wanted to be around other patients. They want to know what other patients are going through, but they wanted it moderated by someone with clinical expertise. So this got to basically the success of boards like Obesity Help, Bariatric PAL. Those boards are wildly successful because patients want to hear from other patients. But then they're always worried about, well, is that stuff true, what I read? Is it really true that you should eat meat tenderizer after you eat meat so that it slides through the pouch easier? They're hearing really wacky things. They get some really good information from the boards, but then there's some wacky stuff that goes on out there. And I'm sure you guys have seen some of that as well. So they want a patient experience moderated by clinical expertise. The fourth piece that they came away with, that after the My Hungry Head program, they felt as though losing weight or regaining weight was not all their fault, that it's not that they're lazy and they have no willpower. And specifically, they pointed out to the modules that go into the physiological pressures to eat, the neurological pressures to eat, the hormonal pressures to eat, the societal pressures to eat, the cultural pressures to eat. So there was within the content of their experience with My Hungry Head, that helped them understand that this is not a willpower issue. If it was willpower, they could keep the weight off. Most of our patients have lost 50 to some of them 100 pounds multiple times. So that was comforting to them. After learning some of these elements, they felt on number 5 that they knew that there are now other levers. There are levers that they can control. There are other aspects of food that they can control or eating other than just the amount of food and the type of food they eat. So those two things were quite important, but they had a better sense of being able to moderate other influences to eating. Now, number 6 was interesting. Some of our presenters and our facilitators are definitely more loose with their language than others. And they said that the language, what helped them was the language was accessible. The PG-13 type of language made the concepts memorable. So that was a big takeaway for us because we're always balancing how professional should you make your information versus how accessible should you make the information. A lot of our patients do not have medical backgrounds, and it turns them off and they get very intimidated, but they do not want to admit that. So that was a good piece of learning for us. Number 7 was hearing from a human who gets it. Now, this is sort of from the world of, in alcohol and addiction counseling. Does a good counselor or behavioral modification person, do they have to have had the same experience? Are ex-alcoholics better therapists than for an alcoholic than someone who has never drank? So there's really no answer to that, but the way in which the facilitator or the information conveys that that the presenter of the information understands where the patient is coming from, that it's not just a matter of balancing the calories in and calories out and eating less and exercising more, that there's more understanding of how to manage their eating behaviors within real life, with all of the pressures that they have in their life other than just eating and managing their weight. I love this word, and I have used this word multiple times, and you'll see it on my next slide. These patients said that this class helped to heal their diet trauma. Many of these patients express that they feel as though they have been traumatized with diets over the years, and they don't even know what's right for them anymore. It's they're just lost in a sea of different types of programs. So they needed to take that time to heal and learn to understand what their body needs, not necessarily what any program tells them they have to have. Number 9 was connection to classmates. Over the 6-week period or the 8-week period, whichever model they went through, they developed quite a close community. Excuse me. They developed a very close community. The courses that I had facilitated, I did not allow them to talk outside of the classroom as part of the course, only unless they wanted to. So if they connected on their own, that was fine, but it was not a programmed part of the course. And what we learned from that is that these patients going through this moderated and interactive program connected quite a bit. Community was huge. They wanted to talk outside the classroom, and they wanted to continue that conversation long after the class. So it's really interesting. We have a women's group that has been running for 8 years, and that women's group started from patients who went to this My Hungry Head program 11 years ago. They all stayed together and then they formalized their groups. So we can't underestimate the power of community with our patients. So, I'm figuring out what's working, what they're getting out of some of these interactive courses and what we can change, but we still don't understand why some of the others are not following up. So with some of these connections in our communities, we're able to track down quite a few patients who have not been following up through our My Hungry Head community that were willing to come in and do a focus group. And we found some interesting things. One of the reasons, and I think everyone knows this one, when our patients regain weight, they're embarrassed, and they said the last place they want to go is back to their clinic, because they feel like they let us down. And those are their exact words. They're embarrassed and they felt like they let us down, like they're not a success story. The other interesting thing is some people have maintained their weight. They just haven't gained any more weight and they think they're okay. They look okay. They are at a number that they're really happy with. We don't know whether they're rotting from the inside out. We have no idea about that. But their weight loss has been maintained. Now, this is a little hard to hear, this next one. The staff doesn't get it. So they felt as though they were getting a lot of information from our program, but that we didn't particularly always get their life circumstances. So that's what they felt their communities get. So they want to hear this. They want to hear that we really understand what's going on in their life and how we can help them fit what they need to get done in their life. They're also getting a lot of support from forum boards. So again, those boards are very, very popular. They're getting over 250,000 hits or subscribers. So they are quite popular. And again, some of the information is great and some of it's very sketchy. I love this one. I didn't know what the heck it meant when they said it, but they said they don't want to follow up and come in just to hear that they need to eat cottage cheese, skim milk, and cheese sticks. They've had it with it. So what that really, we dug down deep. They want variety in their menus. They really want someone to understand their taste and their lifestyle and how they can fit decent, good tasting food in that. They're sick of diet food. There's only so many of those little rice cakes that they wanted to eat. But interestingly, that's what they go back to all the time. They felt like it was their fault. And it's not particularly anything that our program or any other practitioner has said to them. They just feel like it's their fault that they were unable to keep the weight off. So again, that relates to some of that diet trauma stuff that we were just talking about in the previous slide. And this one right here is quite soul destroying because, as you know, most of your patients, if they're coming in for bariatric surgery, or if any of you out there just have a non-surgical component, that patients, when they're shelling out a lot of money for non-surgical programs and employing a diet a physician to help them, or they are going through surgery. It's usually what they feel is their last resort. So they were quite nervous about getting through this, like, oh, another diet trauma. So what would they do? They would just start a new program. Generally, they'd go back to Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig, or they'd start right back to where they started from. They really, again, had a very low understanding of plateaus and how they work and their metabolic rate and what was best for them. This last one, or second to last one, was interesting. They said that it's difficult to access resources. So it's like copays, traveling, getting to work and trying to make it into a clinic before 6 o'clock was really difficult. A lot of people had to take time out of work, and it was very difficult for them to even access the resources. So in the whole scheme of life carrying on and all these different things to do, following up with their program often was pushed to the bottom of the pile. And that led to, if they couldn't connect in person, then it was difficult to reestablish that connection over time. It was just, they just lost contact. And having to do the physical walking in, going through the whole sign-in process in a clinic was just, it wasn't on their calendar to do. So it was difficult for them to reestablish that, especially if they felt as though this was their fault and they were embarrassed to come in. So those were the top 10 reasons that we learned, excuse me, the top 10 reasons that we learned why patients don't follow up. So very, hard information to hear as a program in some respects, but very good information. And we thought, well, what do we do? How do we deal with this? We know My Hungry Head program was pretty good. We know a lot of other things that we do are pretty good. How do we make it so that it's easier for our patients to connect and more meaningful for them? So we did embark on an online connecting program. We have a platform that we are using in order to connect with our patients and to keep them more engaged and get the information out to them. We had to redo all the information that we send out to our patients or connect to our patients. And then we had to figure out, how do we keep them connected? We're on to that, but when do we do it? So this part, I think, was sort of the secret sauce that we had to learn. There's some really good platforms out there that you can offer patients, but when you connect them to the program or to the platforms is pretty key. I mean, way back when, I don't know if they have it anymore, but I believe it was Realize Band had a great site. It was a fabulous site, and patients just did not use it because they just didn't feel as though they needed it at the time. So the timing, if you're going to look at online, any kind of online connecting program, online learning, online support, you want to make sure that you really understand when you're using it. I'll give you these 3 strategic timings. If you think about when you get a new job, you're most likely to change your behavior when you're new to the job, when you want a promotion, or when you are on a performance warning. Those are usually the times when it's most, it's quite easy to change an employee's behavior. It's very similar with strategic timing with bariatric support, pre-surgery or with non-surgical patients as well. When a patient is new to the program, if your platform is part of how things are done in your program, not an add-on like, hey, try this, here's the website, but if it's part of how they connect with your program, it's embedded in the in-person sessions, and it's embedded in the support that's connected outside of the session, they're most likely going to use that system and benefit from it. So they will establish a stronger connection if you incorporate it at the beginning of the program. Now, early post-op, weight loss, it's like magic. The weight's coming off them. Sometimes in non-surgical programs, the first 12 weeks of an HMR or Medifast or any of those, patients are losing a lot of weight. That's the time when you want to use your platform to increase social connection. The more connected they are, whether they're getting good feedback from staff or from other patients, that's a perfect time to keep that connection going. So you want to think about the content you're sending out during this particular period of weight loss. And that's going to be really aimed at increasing that social connection. Now, again, with employees who have to go on performance reviews, right, or performance enhancement programs, it's a similar concept with patients who experience a plateau. This is where we're all going to lose them. So we saw the numbers drop off on the first slide. After that 18-month mark, numbers drop off significantly. So this is where your newsletters, your invites, hey, you want to check out this course, when they're timed perfectly, if you have a nice perfect window of opportunity to send these newsletters out around that, maybe 9th month to 12th month, talking about plateaus. If you want to hit up the patients again around that 18th month, let them know, maybe send them out another video that there's other patients who are struggling with these kind of issues. Again, you're hitting that I'm not alone piece of it, and you're hitting them at a time when it's going to make sense for them and probably want to connect more. So these are, I would say, the secret sauce to using any online support program. Hopefully, if you are using any online support, that you can adjust the timing of when these pieces of information go out. So it's more of a push out at certain times that will help pull patients in. Now, at Lowell General, we do not use all online systems. Some clinics do, some don't use any online at all. We decided to blend. So in terms of blending any kind of traditional and mobile support, we had to think that and really adopt the mindset that online is not in support, it's supporting what you already have in place, not in place of. So our philosophy is that the more you can blend this in to support what you already have happening and your staff understands what's online for support, that you can support it, not replace it. The second piece is what we've chosen to do for Lowell General is use the information online to help educate the patients, connect them to the program and to each other, and then in person, use our in-person opportunities, face-to-face opportunities, to go through applied case studies. That really helps us know whether the patient is understanding it. It really helps them figure out what they know and what they don't know and what they need to work on. The next piece of this that is coming down the pike is embedding social learning and gamification. So one of the things I liked about one of the earlier online support programs is that the clinicians were able to connect with the patients, and patients could connect not so much with each other, but the ones, because they were separate, you had your online forums where patients were connecting with each other, and then you had clinicians connecting with the patient, but some of these where you can embed both, where the clinicians can contact patients maybe through a facilitated class online, and they also have the ability to talk with their fellow patients or fellow cohorts in their classes that they're taking. Huge difference. It really helps with that community building. Gamification, I'm on the older side, so I'm not so much into the game stuff, but patients love to get hits on their comments. They love it. They love to hear ideas. So if you're recipe sharing or idea sharing, gamification, if you're looking at other online support programs, you're going to want to find something that has the social learning and gamification elements to it for down the road, because you do need to remember that in the next 5 to 10 years, most of our patients are coming from the, telephone, cell phone, Game Boy, game this, game that world. So they're all going to be across the online elements. But the important piece to embedding any kind of social learning with your staff is that it's not done in a big brother way. It's not there to monitor. It's there to support. So those are the really big pieces to keep in mind. I'm pretty much wrapping up because I'm sure you guys have to go to lunch or have some lunch. So if you have any questions, just type them in and I will be happy to answer them the best I can. I'll just wait for 1 second. So I do have one, what does this say? How do you deal with non-English speaking patients? That was difficult. We have to have our online content translated. The content that is developed, if you have a good developer and it's done strategically, you'll be able to translate it into any language fairly easily. Most of your platforms that you want to look at, you want to make sure that they transfer into whatever languages that you use most. We were Spanish, so we had to, we're still in the process of changing some of ours into Spanish as well. Any other questions? There's one more. How do we know the patients are learning? So I'm assuming that question means how do we know that they are getting what we need to through the online classes? I'm assuming that's what this question is. The ones that we have developed have, in My Hungry Head and our Core Ready programs, all have tests embedded in them. So some kind of activity that the patient has to apply the knowledge, or whether it's a behavior that they have to sort through different foods to figure out what stages to eat them, or if it might be a true-false test or some kind of assessment embedded in there so that we can tell through the learning platform that they are getting the information. But then also that's where, the strategically embedding this into your entire program and not having it as an add-on helps, where you can make sure that your staff has those activities that they can actually use with the patient. So we're not just saying, oh, do you know how much you have to do? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Yes and no questions aren't going to help us know whether our patient's learning. We've learned through our lecture-based classes that when we finish them, we often find that we're waking up 2 or 3 patients in the back of the class anyway. So you don't really know even in a lecture how much your patients are getting. Okay, I'm sorry, I got another one coming in. How do you prevent the patient from taking the classes all at once? Okay, so I'm assuming this question is if you post your information, if you upload all of your classes or your information to the support platform, how do you know the patient's not, you have the overzealous patient just ripping through the classes, sitting in bed, taking them all at once? They can, if that's the way you set it up. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a system, like with eCurate system, we have multiple ways you can do it. It's your choice, whether you want to create a learning curriculum that freezes the classes before they get through prerequisites. So it depends on what you want to achieve from that. So that consulting between you and the support platform provider needs to make sure that we understand what you're trying to achieve, and then you arrange the classes in that way. Yeah. Sorry, there's one more. So there's one more about literacy. What if someone can't read? We have, Lowell General had this problem where a number of their patients had not ever passed 6th grade. So, and their 6th grade reading comprehension, I don't think was even at 6th grade. It might have been somewhere around 2. So that was very difficult. what we had to do with Core Ready and any of the programs, My Hungry Head as well, anything that is written on the slide should be spoken as well, so that there's a level of audio, visual that can compensate for any kind of literacy levels. Everything should be written at least at a grade 8 level, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. So, there's always that fine balance between being, accessible versus, cutesy and kitschy and condescending. So just take a peek at your courses, or at eCurate, we generally allow you to take a peek at the courses so that you can make sure that they make sense for you. I have another question here. Do you contact in-person post-op group meetings in addition to online? Or do you conduct in-person post-op support group meetings? Are all patients combined into one group, or do you separate between pre and post? At Lowell General, there's a mix. So they have in-person groups, they have online support groups, and there are some groups that are just open forums, in person and online, where anyone can join and they can talk to each other in the groups. And then there are some groups that are closed groups. So for example, My Hungry Head class does have a social learning component to it. And that group meets in person, and then they have homework exercises that they talk about during the week online. So there's multiple ways that you can accomplish that, and it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So when we designed eCurate, the reason eCurate was founded pretty much was to solve a lot of Lowell General's problems. But as we go out and talk to people like yourselves around the U.S., and actually overseas as well, everyone runs their program just a little bit differently. So we had to build our components so that they're very flexible and you can use them whichever way fits best for your group. So you have to have a flexible platform, a platform that has these components that you can turn on and off. So if you want to have a social element to it on one class, but you don't want a social element on another class, you need to be able to turn these things on and off. As a practitioner, as a clinician, I would say that particularly early post-op, you definitely need some in-person post-op support groups. I'm not a fan of going all online or all in-person. I really think a blended approach tends to work best for most places. There are going to be some circumstances where you may have to do all online. We have some concierge cases from Bangladesh and India that have been coming in, northern Russia, coming into the U.S. for support. So, of course, they're going to be mostly online. I think further out post-ops, they tend to respond a little better to retreats in our programs that I've worked with, but again, that's up to you. Any other questions? I think I'm just running up to the time limit. I'll give it another second. Hopefully that answered your questions. So I think we're all set. I'd love to thank you all for joining us. We'll touch base, see what you think. And if you have any other questions, we'll be happy to cover them online or on the phone, whichever works for you. And we'll also record this, as Mike said, and get that sent out to you. Thanks.